Grief hits people differently. Some cry, some isolate, some develop an immediate craving for things like funeral potatoes or unearned absolution. My wife, apparently, developed a sudden addiction to her best friend's cologne. I first noticed it at the wake, when she hugged me, and the scent clung to her neck like a secret. Not her perfume, not the soft vanilla she always wore to bed, but an unmistakably masculine blend of oud, leather, and whatever lies taste like. It was subtle, not overwhelming, like the echo of a mistake she hoped wouldn't echo at all, and that was the first fracture, the hairline crack in the coffin she was so good at nailing shut with smiles. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, hand on the small of her back as we greeted mourners at her mother's viewing, while her other hand rested far too comfortably on her best friend Clara's arm. Clara, who used to wear sunflower dresses and no makeup, now with eyelash extensions thick enough to shade a lie and a neckline that dipped lower every time she visited our house. Clara, who somehow found the strength to comfort my wife by whispering in her ear a little too closely, with touches that lasted one beat longer than comfort demanded. I watched them, how they locked eyes when no one else was looking, how Clara's hand rested on her waist like it belonged there, not just in mourning but in muscle memory. And I noticed something else. My wife, fresh from her mother's death, wasn't shattered. She was invigorated, charged like a phone that had just hit 100%. The grief wasn't hollowing her out, it was charging her up, and I didn't know why until I saw the receipt. It was in her coat pocket, crumpled, half-wet, nearly discarded. A receipt from a boutique hotel 3 towns over, dated 3 days before her mother died. Room service charges, 2 glasses of champagne, 1 room for 2. The name on the receipt was Clara Evans. My wife had signed as a guest. I unfolded it 3 times just to make sure it was real, just to feel the paper break along the crease as if somehow I could undo it by forcing it flat. Still, I said nothing, because it wasn't time yet. You don't shoot the fox before it strays too far from the henhouse. You wait, you track its scent, you learn its rhythm, so when you strike, there's no escape. The funeral was the perfect theater for betrayal. Everyone dressed in black, pretending sorrow makes saints of us all, while secrets whispered in corners like unwanted guests. I watched Clara carry the urn, hands trembling for effect. I watched my wife deliver a eulogy full of crocodile tears and empty metaphors about life, love, and legacy. But it was the way she thanked Clara afterward that sealed it. No one else noticed it, but I did, the way she brushed a strand of hair behind Clara's ear and mouth. Thank you. For everything. That everything did a lot of heavy lifting. It wasn't gratitude, it was intimacy, coated in grief. I didn't get angry. That would have been too easy, too predictable. Instead, I observed. I memorized how they moved around each other, how they created this little gravitational field that pulled them closer every time they tried to pretend they weren't touching. It was a dance of denial choreographed over months, maybe years. And I let them dance. Let them believe they were careful. Let them think the dead don't speak. But the dead do speak, just not in words. They speak in receipts, in cologne, and the kinds of glances that forget other people have eyes. So I planned. Quietly. Methodically. The kind of planning you do when you know you're not just ending a marriage, you're staging a performance. And I wanted an audience. I wanted every single person who cried at that funeral to see the truth buried beneath the flowers and prayers. My wife believed she was burying her past. What she didn't realize is that I was digging up her future, and I was going to burn it down, piece by piece, until all she had left was the ash of her own lies. But not yet. First, I needed her to believe I was still the grieving husband, the pillar of support, the man too blinded by death to see betrayal standing inches from him in heels. And oh, did she believe it? She leaned into me during the closing hymn, tears real this time, not for her mother, but for how safe she felt in the arms of the man she didn't know was about to deliver her eulogy. Not with words, but with ruin. They say healing isn't linear, and I believed that when she started going on long walks by herself. At first, it made sense. After the funeral, the air in the house was too still, too thick with unspoken things. She said walking cleared her head, gave her space to think. I didn't argue. I cooked dinner, made the bed, took care of the bills, and tried to rebuild the rhythm of our life around the silence she left behind each time she stepped out. She said it was about reflection, about grief, but she always came back smelling like hotel soap, like the kind you steal after a quick rinse and a quicker exit. Still, I said nothing. Because I wanted to believe her version of peace. I wanted to believe that space meant healing, not hiding. I wanted to believe that she was still mine, even as she started slipping through my fingers like water I could no longer cup. She started wearing new clothes, colors she used to hate. Olive green, dark burgundy, tied in places she once claimed to feel insecure about. She got her nails done in sharp, glossy ovals, not the rounded tips she used to ask me to open soda cans with. And there was this one dress, a silky, black, backless thing that she claimed she bought for a friend's party. I didn't ask which friend. I just stared at the dress hanging in the closet next to her funeral outfit, wondering how one woman could live two lives so easily. Her smile changed too. It wasn't absent, it was just edited, polished, performed. The kind of smile you wear when you're already laughing with someone else in your mind. It was subtle, but it was surgical. I'd kiss her goodnight, and she'd kiss back. But her lips always felt like the closing of a door. She started locking her phone, not just with a password, but with her face. She'd tilt the screen away when a notification popped up, always claiming it was from a grief support group or a coworker needing emotional bandwidth. She started using words like that. Bandwidth, boundaries, personal growth. Like our marriage was a slow-loading web page and she just didn't have the patience for the buffering anymore. We stopped watching our favorite shows together. She said they felt emotionally heavy. We used to binge crime documentaries and argue over who the real killer was. Now, she preferred light comedies, alone, in the guest room, doors slightly ajar but always closed when I got too close. Her laughter still echoed down the hall, but never reached the bedroom. I'd ask how her day was, and she'd say, productive, like that was enough. No details. Just that word, productive, as if the metrics of her soul were now measured in checklists I wasn't allowed to see. I found a parking ticket in her glove box for a part of town she never mentioned visiting. When I asked, she said she went there to sit with her feelings. I nodded, because the lie was beautiful, and sometimes you let beauty lie, even if it's wrapped in the stench of motel linens and borrowed time. Her best friend Clara visited more often, always bringing wine, always wearing perfume that lingered too long on our couch. They'd disappear into the backyard to talk, sometimes for hours. I'd hear snippets, phrases like, "You deserve happiness," and "don't shrink yourself," and I started to wonder who, exactly, was supposed to be shrinking. I started hearing her phone buzz in the bathroom while she showered, and when I once peeked at the screen, all I saw was a heart emoji next to a contact labeled Sunflower. That was the name of a dog she once said she hated. Now it was apparently someone she texted at 2 a.m. I never asked who it was. I didn't need to. I just started setting my alarm earlier, brushing my teeth in silence while she still slept, taking my time, watching her breathe like nothing had changed. Like I wasn't already living in the aftermath of a betrayal that hadn't been spoken yet, but screamed in 1,000 quiet ways. We stopped making plans. Vacations became vague dreams. Anniversary dinners turned into "we'll figure something out." Her calendar filled up with solo activities, yoga retreats, weekend book clubs, art classes. I didn't even know she liked painting. She came home once with streaks of dried clay on her wrists and a story about molding grief into something beautiful and breakable. That's how she described it. Beautiful and breakable. I smiled, and agreed, and kissed her forehead while imagining how easy it would be to crush something so delicate underfoot. Not her. Not yet. Just the illusion she was building, the lie she was feeding with every curated breath. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just watching. Waiting. Measuring the distance between us not in miles or minutes, but in secrets. In the way she stopped asking about my day. In the way she started turning off the lights without saying goodnight. In the way she said, "I love you," like she was clocking out. And still, I told myself it was a phase. Still, I let the silence grow between us, like a wound I wasn't ready to clean. Because even then, I wanted to believe she was still mine. Even as she began planting her freedom in soil I never touched. Even as she watered it with words that sounded like growth but bloomed into nothing that included me. She told me she was going to Clara's for the weekend. Just a girl's reset, yoga, face masks, intentional rest. Whatever the hell that means when it comes from someone who can't even look you in the eye while packing a duffel bag. I didn't argue. I even helped her fold her leggings, the same ones she only ever wore at home, not out. I made her coffee while she zipped her bag, kissed her cheek as she grabbed her keys, and waved goodbye like a man waving from the shore to a boat that's already sinking. She didn't even look back. That was the part that should have hurt. But it didn't. Nothing really hurt anymore. It just confirmed things I already knew but hadn't allowed to calcify into certainty. Until that night. Until the dog needed a walk and I passed her car parked 3 blocks from our house, tucked between a rusted pickup and a minivan with a baby on board sticker peeling off the back window. Her car. Not Clara's. Not the Uber she said she took. I stood there, hands in my pockets, watching the windows fog over with the kind of steam that doesn't come from weather, but from skin. I didn't approach. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe too loudly. Just observed. Took in the faint shadow of movement in the driver's seat. A head, not hers, leaning over. A hand, definitely hers, gripping the door like leverage. And then, laughter. Her laughter. Light, breathy, and so unguarded it didn't sound like the woman I lived with. It sounded like the woman I used to know before she turned our life into a play and handed out roles to everyone but me. I walked away. Calm. Measured. Let the dog do his business under a flickering streetlight, while inside I felt everything compress, not explode. That was the switch. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Just cold, surgical precision sliding into place. When I got home, I fed the dog, sat down at her desk, and opened her laptop. The password was her mother's birthday. How poetic. The first thing I saw was her email, an open tab she'd forgotten to close in her haste. Inbox, unread count. 1. Subject line, last night was everything. I clicked it. Of course I did. And there it was, like a knife carved into a church pew. A message from a private address. No name. Just an initial. A. The message was short, casual. Can still smell you on me. Next weekend, same room. Attached was a photo. Blurry. Candlelit. Her back, naked. Her shoulder, bitten. Her face, turned just enough to reveal the same smile she used to give me when she thought I was the only man in the room. I didn't scream. I didn't punch the wall or throw the laptop or rage at the sky like some pathetic rom-com cliché. I just sat there, staring at the screen, until the monitor dimmed from inactivity. Then I clicked the trackpad, brought the light back, because that's what I was in that moment. Not a man, not a husband, but light. Cold, clear light. The kind that exposes mold, decay, infestation. The kind that doesn't burn. It just shows you what's already rotting. I opened her message threads. Found the chain with sunflower. Of course. It wasn't just one. There were others. Conversations sprinkled like breadcrumbs leading back to every moment she said she needed time for herself. Every weekend she claimed was about self-love. Every night she turned away from me in bed. Every fake laugh. Every exaggerated sigh. I saw texts from Clara too, dozens. But not just friendship. Not just support. Photos. Plans. Memories made without me. Jokes about me. He still has no idea, LOL. Too busy playing house. Let's talk later. I want your hands on me again. Clara. Her best friend. The one who cried at the funeral. The one who toasted to my loyalty with the same lips that kissed my wife in the shadows. That's when everything inside me went still. Not numb, focused. The stillness of a man who's done bleeding and started measuring angles. I shut the laptop. Pushed the chair back. Looked around our home like it was a crime scene, and I was the last living witness. She wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she hadn't been for a long time. Maybe I was just the scaffolding she needed until she rebuilt herself into someone she didn't want me to see. But I'd seen her now. All of her. And I wasn't heartbroken. I was operational. From that moment on, I wasn't her husband. I was the architect of her downfall. And the plans had already begun. She came back Sunday night like nothing had happened. Same duffel bag. Same soft voice, same casual lie that almost made me laugh. She said Clara had a migraine, so they stayed in and just talked all night. Like that was the kind of thing that explained the bruise on her inner thigh I saw when her robe slipped open as she walked into the bathroom. I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. I smiled, told her I hoped Clara felt better, and poured her a glass of wine with the same hand I had just used to unlock the second phone I'd hidden in the garage, a cheap burner I'd picked up earlier that week, registered under a fake name. Loaded with a prepaid SIM, because if I was going to go to war, I wasn't going in unarmed. I'd spent the entire weekend building my new life, not one of freedom, but of observation, of data, of quiet, surgical revenge. The first thing I did was go through our shared calendar, the one she thought I barely looked at. I cross-referenced every self-care day, every friend's birthday, every last-minute cancellation where she claimed exhaustion or emotional overload, and matched them to a spreadsheet I created detailing hotel addresses, Uber receipts, credit card statements. And that one recurring Venmo payment labeled Sunflower Arrangement Sunflower, which I now knew was code for the woman she used to claim was just a little too much. I messaged Clara from the burner that night, using a profile picture of a clean-cut guy with a dog and a flirty smile, something vague, appealing. I used the name M. Just M. Nothing more. It took 20 minutes for her to respond. "Hey cutie, where do we meet again?" she asked, like that was normal. I told her we met at the wine bar last Thursday. Her reply came with a selfie. Lips pursed. Shirt low cut. "I've had too much wine to remember, but I'm sure I liked you." That was all I needed to confirm. Clara wasn't just the accomplice. She was the conduit. From there, I mapped it all out. I had timelines. I had location data from her iCloud, which she never remembered to log out of when she borrowed my MacBook. I installed a keystroke tracker just once, long enough to grab passwords to her email, Instagram, and Notes app. The notes were the goldmine. Hidden folders titled, "To Remember," "To Say," and "When He Asks." They were scripts. Emotional cheat codes. Phrases like, "I just feel like I'm changing and don't take this personally. I'm trying to grow." I read them all while she slept in our bed, curled away from me like I radiated guilt instead of patience. During the day, I started planting seeds, asking her how Clara was doing, mentioning names she hadn't heard in years to see if she'd flinch. "Did you ever get back in touch with Allison? You used to be so close." She blinked, hesitated. "No, haven't talked in forever." Lie. Allison posted a photo just a week ago, my wife, Clara, and her holding cocktails under string lights with the caption, "Girls' Night, Healing Vibes." I didn't confront her. I just nodded, said, "Shame. You two were always so good for each other." That night, she barely touched her dinner. I started testing her more small, intricate tests she couldn't prepare for. I told her I was thinking of taking a few days off work, seeing if she'd rearrange her schedule to accommodate my sudden presence. She didn't. Instead, she encouraged it. "You deserve rest," she said with a soft voice and dead eyes. I told her my boss's wife had just caught him cheating, asked her what she thought about that. She sipped her wine too quickly, then said, "Honestly, I think people just grow apart sometimes." Not a flicker of sympathy. Not even a question about what happened. That was the tell. She no longer saw cheating as betrayal, just transition. And I was the stage she was stepping off of. The final confirmation came on a random Wednesday when she said she'd be at Clara's late, something about a new moon circle or some nonsense about feminine energy. I hired a courier to deliver a bouquet of lilies to Clara's address, signed from my wife, just to see if Clara would post about it, mention it, or respond to the delivery. She didn't, because she wasn't home. Her lights were off. But my wife's car was parked in a different neighborhood entirely outside a townhouse I'd never seen before. I waited until morning, tracked the plate number of the car parked in the driveway. Belonged to a woman named Ava. Hey, the one from the email. I smiled. Just once. Because now I had the full circle. Clara was the smokescreen. Ava was the real fire. And my wife? She was just the match. By then, I had already printed every receipt, every screenshot, every message. I had copies stashed in the garage, the office, the car, even mailed to a private P.O. box. Insurance. Redundancy. This wasn't about catching her anymore. This was about setting the scene, laying the trap, making sure that when I pulled the trigger, the blast radius would touch every corner of her carefully curated life. She still walked around like she was free, like she was untouchable. She still kissed me on the cheek every morning before work. Still posted the occasional throwback photo of us with captions like, "Through it all, grateful for this man." And I smiled back. Always smiled. Because by then, I wasn't just a man anymore. I was gravity. And she was seconds from the fall. She thought it was just another charity gala, black tie, open bar, a silent auction raising money for causes neither of us cared about anymore. She wore the navy dress I bought her for our anniversary last year, the one that dipped low in the back and made her feel powerful, and I told her she looked beautiful because she did, even if the dress now clung to someone I no longer recognized. We arrived together, arm in arm, the perfect couple painted in smiles, her fingers resting lightly on my forearm like I was still her safe place. I laughed with donors, shook hands with CEOs, and all the while I watched her watch the room, scanning, waiting, like she was expecting someone else to walk in. That's when Ava entered, dressed down, subtle, playing her part flawlessly. She didn't approach us. She just hovered, near the bar, nursing a drink, making sure my wife saw her. And she did. Her hand tightened just slightly around my wrist. Her posture stiffened. Her eyes flicked away too quickly. She tried to pretend she didn't recognize her, but the damage was done. I turned to her slowly, leaned in close, and said, "Do you want to tell me who that is?" She blinked, smiled like she didn't understand the question. Who? She asked, voice light, almost amused. The woman you told Clara you were addicted to, I said calmly, and watched as her smile fractured like glass hit with a hammer. It's not what you think, she said, too fast, too practiced. I didn't move, didn't flinch. Just looked at her like I was reading a label on something poisonous. We were just talking, she added, quieter, like lowering the volume made it truer. Talking in hotel rooms? Talking in other people's beds? Is that how you talk now? She laughed once, dry, bitter. You're being dramatic. It wasn't serious. It was a mistake. She looked around, suddenly aware of the crowd, of how exposed she was. We were going through a rough patch, she said, eyes pleading now. You never paid attention to me. I felt invisible. I tilted my head. So you made yourself seen. With Clara. With Ava. With anyone who looked at you long enough to make you feel real again. Her face twisted. She dropped the pretense. You were boring, she snapped. Predictable. You made me feel trapped. I let her words hang in the air. Let the silence swallow them whole. Then I reached into my coat and pulled out the envelope I'd been carrying all night. I handed it to her without a word. She looked down at it, hesitant, then opened it slowly. Photos, screenshots, hotel receipts, text messages. Her breath hitched. Her skin drained of color. Where did you get this? She whispered, fingers trembling. Everywhere you weren't looking, I said. She flipped through the pages, faster, panic creeping in around the edges of her controlled expression. You went through my phone? She asked, grasping for indignation like it could shield her. No, I said softly. You left the door open. I just walked through. She stared at the last photo, her kissing Ava in a restaurant parking lot. Time-stamped, undeniable. Her mouth opened but nothing came out. And then, the mask came back. The smile, the tilt of the head, the venom. You're pathetic, she said, voice low. Spying on your wife like some sad little detective. You really think this makes you better than me? I smiled, not warmly, but the kind of smile you give someone right before you let them drown. No, I said. I don't think I'm better. I know I am. Because I waited. I watched. And while you were playing dress-up with strangers, I was building your exit. Her face fell. What do you mean? She asked, voice breaking for the first time. I leaned in close. I mean, I know where every dollar in our accounts is. I know which passwords you never changed. I know which of your friends will side with me when this becomes public, and which of yours are sleeping with each other behind your back. Her eyes widened. You're bluffing. Am I? I replied, then pulled my phone from my pocket and tapped play on the audio file, her voice, drunk, telling Clara she never loved me, that I was just a phase she had to survive. The sound played quietly, just between us, like a ghost whispering a eulogy. Please, she said now, voice softer, panic real. We can talk about this. Not here. Not like this. I shook my head. This is the only place, I said. In front of people. In the open. Just like you made our life a lie in private. She tried to reach for me, but I stepped back. Not fast. Not cruel. Just final. Her eyes were glass now. Cracks forming. Panic. Desperation. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Not until she understood what it felt like to be powerless in a room full of people. I turned slightly, gestured toward Ava, who now stood with Clara, both watching, frozen in guilt. Smile, I whispered. Everyone's watching now. And they were. The crowd was turning. Heads tilted. Conversation slowed. My wife's perfect illusion crumbling beneath a chandelier. And I just stood there, quiet, composed, the architect watching the demolition begin. She followed me out into the corridor like a storm too arrogant to notice it had already been named and forecasted. Heels clicking on marble like the countdown to her own implosion. And as soon as we were alone enough to be dangerous, she dropped the last of her masks and went for the throat. You smothered me, she hissed, eyes wild, voice sharp and shaking, not with fear, but fury born from exposure. You were always there, watching, breathing down my neck, like I couldn't exist without your permission. I said nothing, just looked at her the way a man looks at a puzzle he's already solved. Don't give me that silent act, she spat, stepping closer. Say something, damn it. I did. One word. No. Her face cracked again, a twitch at the corner of her eye. She needed chaos. She needed volume. And I wasn't giving it to her. This wouldn't have happened if you were a real man, she snapped, louder now, venom in every syllable, hoping to draw blood. A real man wouldn't just work, pay bills, sleep. You made life so predictable I had to light something on fire just to feel alive again. I met her eyes then, held them, let her see there was nothing left in me to burn. And now all you have is smoke, I replied, voice flat. Choke on it. She flinched, just slightly but enough. Enough to know the words landed. You think you're better than me now? She snarled, hands clenching like claws. You think you're so above it all just because you caught me first? I shook my head. I didn't catch you. You walked into the cage and locked the door behind you. I just turned on the lights. Her mouth opened, closed. She tried again. You're cold. You've always been cold. That's why I drifted. You never made me feel wanted. Wanted? I echoed, tilting my head. You were worshipped. But worship is wasted on someone who kneels for strangers. She gasped like I'd struck her, but I hadn't moved an inch. Her tears started. Not real ones. Not yet. But the pre-crying tremble she used to use when she forgot an anniversary or needed to borrow against trust. You don't understand, she said now, voice shaking, softer, trying a new tactic. I was grieving. I was lost. I didn't know who I was anymore. I raised an eyebrow. So you found yourself in hotel beds and my best friend's mouth. Her hand shot up, almost like she'd slap me, but stopped mid-air, realizing I wouldn't react. Not with fear, not with anger, not with anything. You're not even human, she whispered. You're a machine. How can you be so calm? I stepped forward then, not to threaten, but to end it. Because I buried you days ago, I said, eyes locked on hers. This is just the funeral. She broke then, not loud, not in a collapse, but in a way that was quiet and personal. She turned from me, paced, ran her fingers through her hair, muttering to herself. I can fix this. We can fix this. It wasn't real. It didn't mean anything. She turned back, desperation leaking from every movement. Please, we can still fix it. I stared at her. This woman who once held every piece of my heart, now reduced to a trembling silhouette of entitlement and regret. You broke it, I said calmly. I just swept it into a pile so no one else would step on it. She came closer again, hands out, eyes wide. You loved me. I know you did. You still do. I did, I said. But I don't love corpses. Her lips quivered. Don't say that. Then stop acting dead, I replied. Stop clinging to a version of yourself you murdered the moment you called betrayal healing. Her mouth twisted, pain and rage and confusion boiling beneath the surface. You really don't care, do you? She asked, almost to herself. Not anymore, I confirmed. And that's what scares you most. Not that I'm angry, not that I'm leaving, but that I looked at the wreckage you made and felt absolutely nothing. She staggered back, breath shallow, and for the first time, I saw it, fear. Real fear. Not of me. Of the void. Of being unmasked, unneeded, undone. She opened her mouth again, searching for some last line, some closing argument. But there was nothing left to say, nothing left to manipulate. The strings were cut. The game was over. And I hadn't just won. I'd walked off the board. I began with the evidence, not because I needed it to convince anyone. I already had the truth like a weapon under my coat. But because precision matters when you're preparing to erase someone. Every screenshot, every text, every photo and voice memo was organized into labeled folders across 2 encrypted drives. One backed up on a cloud she couldn't access, the other hidden inside a safety deposit box in a bank she didn't know I used. I printed hard copies too, arranged chronologically in a black binder with tabs, just in case the world ever demanded a performance. Then I moved to the finances. Quietly, efficiently, I transferred my paychecks into a new private account. I removed her from our joint credit cards and locked the ones in my name. I stopped direct deposits to our shared savings and routed the utilities into my name alone. I reclaimed the car. My name was the only one on the title, had the spare keys reprogrammed, and parked it in a private garage 3 blocks away. She didn't even notice it was gone until 2 days later. Must be towed, she said. I nodded. Let her believe in randomness. That was the fun part. She still thought she had time, that we were still in some kind of Cold War. But this wasn't war anymore. It was dissection. I consulted with an attorney, not one of those billboard grifters, but a sharp, understated man who spoke in facts, not promises. We mapped everything, assets, timelines, breach of trust, even the digital trail I'd been collecting. He was impressed. Most men come in here too angry to think clearly, he said. You've already done half my job. I filed the divorce papers 2 days later, served by courier to her work, during lunch hour, delivered with a courtesy card and a pin. I chose the location intentionally, her office, where her coworkers would see the confusion on her face, the color drain, the flash of panic. Inside the envelope wasn't just the divorce filing, it was a copy of the binder. Not the original, just enough to show I wasn't bluffing. And a note. This is the part where the masks fall off. She didn't call me. Not right away. She needed time to spin. And while she spun, I kept moving. I called her parents. Not to slander her, not to rage, but to inform. I emailed them a file, audio clips of her laughing about her affairs, screen recordings of texts with Clara, and a single photo of her and Ava, timestamped. I ended the message with one sentence. She deserves to tell you the story herself, but she never will. They never replied. But I knew they read it. That was enough. I sent a similar package to Clara's husband. Yes, she had one. Out of town most of the year for work, oblivious, loyal. I didn't include everything, just enough to draw the outlines of betrayal and let him color in the rest. Then I turned to her job. She worked in HR. Ironic, really. I waited until the Monday after the papers were served. Sent a message, not from me, but from an anonymous account with attachments. Her explicit text sent from her work device, her calendar blocking fake appointments while she disappeared during company hours, and a small collection of images she'd forgotten to delete from a shared company drive. I didn't ask them to fire her. I just gave them what they needed to do it themselves. Meanwhile, I changed the locks at the house. She'd moved in with Clara by then, how poetic, and assumed she could still drop by to talk things through. She tried once. Her key didn't work. I watched through the camera feed as she stood there, confused, knocking, pacing, calling my phone. I didn't answer. She texted, "We need to talk." I replied with one line, "We already did. You just weren't listening." Then I deleted her number. I didn't block it. I wanted to see the messages pile up, wanted her to scream into a void that no longer belonged to her. I cleared our home of her presence in a single weekend. Her clothes, boxed. Her books, packed. Every picture, every gift, every note she'd ever left me, all stored in the garage, labeled, "Return to sender." I placed the boxes outside Clara's door with a receipt taped on top. Final delivery. No returns. She tried to contact my friends, told them I was unraveling, that I needed help. I'd already sent them everything. Some responded with silence. Others with fury. No one believed her. Her circle shrank by the day. And I didn't say a word. Not to her. Not to anyone. Because this wasn't about gloating. It was about control. She had turned our life into a stage, cast herself as the victim, and handed me the role of fool. But I rewrote the script, burned the theater down, and walked out clean. She still thinks the worst is over. She thinks the silence is mercy. But what she doesn't realize is the silence is just space, space I've given her to watch everything she built collapse. And she has no one left to blame but herself. The room was full of people who used to love her, colleagues, friends, family, all gathered for her promotion party, an event she'd planned for weeks, thinking this would be her victory lap, her proof that she'd outrun the fallout. She wore white, like purity could be sewn into fabric, smiling that same rehearsed smile, floating from group to group with a champagne flute in hand and lies in her teeth. She didn't know that half the room had already seen the truth, because I made sure of it. I'd sent the packages 2 days before, USB drives labeled, "For your awareness," with no return address, delivered quietly to her boss, her parents, her close circle, even the junior staff she used to talk down to. I didn't include explanations, only evidence, text threads, videos, her laughing about the men she manipulated, audio clips where she mocked the very people now standing just feet away from her. Her boss tried to stay polite, but he avoided her eyes. Her father wouldn't hug her. Her sister offered a brittle smile, one that didn't touch her eyes, and Clara had vanished. She thought Clara would be by her side, like always, whispering validation, propping her up. But Clara was with me now, figuratively, at least. After I sent her husband the evidence, Clara's life imploded, and in her scorched ruin, she found clarity. Clara sent me a message that morning. I made my bed, but I'm not covering for her anymore. She didn't show up. No one warned my wife. No one said a word. They just stood there, watching her celebrate nothing, waiting for the moment it would all crash. It came when her boss tapped the microphone for his speech. He looked at her, then at the crowd, lips tight. "Before we go any further," he said, "there are some serious concerns that have come to light. A ripple passed through the crowd like wind over still water. Her face froze. Due to a breach in company conduct, we're initiating a full internal review, effective immediately. The promotion is on hold pending the outcome. The mic clicked off. He walked away. She blinked, laughed awkwardly, turned toward her coworkers for support. None of them met her eyes. She tried to speak, but her voice caught. "There's a mistake," she said, too loudly. "This is a misunderstanding." A few people glanced at each other. Whispers began. She turned again, this time toward her parents. Her mother crossed her arms. Her father shook his head and looked at the floor. "You have to believe me," she said, her voice thinning out. "It's not what it looks like." Then a voice from the back, her sister. "We all heard the recordings." Just that. Nothing else. But it hit her like a brick. She staggered. Laughed again, brittle and breaking. "You don't understand. He manipulated you all. He twisted everything." I stepped forward then, slowly, through the crowd that parted without a word. She saw me. Her breath caught. Her hand reached out instinctively, like I was still her anchor. I didn't take it. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, still, unmoved, watching. Her eyes flicked around the room, searching for anyone to step in, to save her. No one did. Her friends, the ones she bragged to about her affairs, stood with arms crossed, ashamed they'd ever believed her. The room, once filled with her laughter, was silent now, dense, heavy, condemning. She tried again. "This was supposed to be a celebration," she said, eyes glassy, voice cracking under the weight. "I've worked so hard." Another laugh, this one manic. "You're all judging me? Like none of you have secrets?" She pointed at someone. "You cheated on your wife." At another. "You sent me messages I never responded to." No one answered. No one defended her. They didn't have to. The evidence spoke louder than any denial. She turned back to me, eyes wild, mascara starting to smudge. "Say something," she pleaded. "Tell them it's not what they think." I said nothing. Just looked at her, the same way you look at a storm that's finally passed, exhausted, pathetic, done. She started crying then. Not the crocodile tears she used to get out of arguments, but the ugly kind. The heaving, collapsing, foundation-breaking kind. Her knees buckled. She sat down where she stood, too shattered to hold up her pride anymore. Still, I didn't move. I didn't reach for her. I didn't offer words. I just stood there, silent, calm, letting her drown in the weight of everything she'd built and destroyed. She looked up at me one last time, whispering, "Please." I didn't mean for it to be like this. And I just blinked. Slowly. Because there was nothing left to mean. Nothing left to fix. The truth had done its work. And I was exactly where I wanted to be, still, steady, watching the final curtain fall. The silence that followed her breakdown didn't last long, not with all the weight pressing down on her like gravity had finally remembered her name. But it wasn't guilt that made her stand up again, it was defiance, twisted into a mask of desperation. She spun toward me, voice shaking but louder now, slicing through the hush in the room. "You think you're better than me? You think this little stunt makes you a hero?" Her voice cracked on hero, but she pushed through, gesturing wildly as eyes locked onto her from every corner of the room. "You're a controlling, lifeless, robotic husband who couldn't love a woman if she screamed for it. You turned me into a ghost, and now you're surprised I look for warmth somewhere else." Gasps echoed. Her mother flinched like she'd been slapped. Her boss stood frozen near the bar, unsure whether to intervene or vanish. I didn't speak yet. I let her dig. She needed the illusion that she still had the shovel. "You're not a victim," she screamed, voice echoing now. "You're a martyr, desperate to make everyone think you were some perfect saint while I suffered in silence." I took a step forward. Just one. And the room seemed to breathe in, like the walls themselves were waiting. "No," I said, calmly at first. "You didn't suffer in silence. You suffered in satin sheets in other people's beds. You suffered with smiles and champagne and stolen affection. You didn't suffer, you performed." Her father let out a slow, sharp breath. Her sister covered her mouth. "You have no idea what I've carried," she snapped, defiant again, rising, trembling. "You think I wanted to be this woman? You left me alone in a marriage built on routine and empty words, and instead of telling the truth, I cut in, voice rising for the first time, you chose deceit. You invited people into our lives just to hide inside them. You had a choice, and you picked the most cowardly one every single time." Her lip curled. "Oh, don't pretend like you were some kind of husband of the year. You were emotionally absent, always 3 feet away even when you were in the room." I begged for connection. "No," I snapped. "You begged for attention, not connection. You didn't want to rebuild. You wanted applause. And when I didn't clap for your self-destruction, you blamed me for not watching you burn. She took a step back, eyes flashing. You're twisting this. You're making me into a villain because it makes you feel powerful. I'm not making you into anything, I replied, voice sharp now, clean and cutting. You did that all by yourself. I'm just holding up the mirror. She looked around, realizing every eye was still on her. Phones were out. Her boss was quietly ushering someone toward the back exit, probably HR. Her friend Rachel whispered something to another woman, shaking her head in disbelief. And then, from the far corner, a voice cut through the noise, Ava's voice. Quiet. Trembling. I didn't know about Clara, she said, stunned, eyes wide. You said it was just your marriage, that it was already over. The room gasped again. It wasn't just Ava, I said, louder now. It was Clara. It was the yoga instructor. The coworker in Denver. Should I keep going? Her face twisted into something grotesque. Rage, shame, collapse, all trying to surface at once. You're a monster, she hissed. You're standing here, humiliating me like this. What kind of man does that? I stepped forward, now inches from her, not touching, just towering. The kind of man who trusted you, loved you, waited for you to come home, even when you stopped knocking. I looked around the room, made sure everyone heard it. And the kind of man who finally realized that letting you destroy me quietly would have been the real mistake. She screamed then, not words, just frustration and humiliation given sound. Someone tried to calm her, but she shoved their hand away. Her mascara ran, her shoulders heaved, her voice cracked as she shouted, None of you understand what it's like. I was dying inside. No, I said, my voice like steel, you were hungry for validation, for power, for control. And now you're starving. Because no one's feeding your lies anymore. The room fell into a thick, stunned silence. And for the first time, she looked small. Not shattered, shrunk. Not broken, exposed. Her power drained, her presence hollow. She tried to step toward me, one last move, one final plea, but I didn't flinch, didn't soften, didn't reach out. I just looked at her the way a man looks at a fire after it's burned everything to ash. Still, steady, unforgiving. And then I turned, slow, deliberate, and walked through the crowd that parted like a curtain, every face turned toward the ruins she'd made of herself, and I didn't look back once. Because when a mask falls, you don't help it up. You leave it there, for everyone to see.